Hello, this is Ben Television News Roundup, a compilation of major stories in the weekend. I'm Tunde Alabi. Thank you for being part of the program today. Strong earthquake has swept through central Italy, with death toll rising above 240, causing extensive damage to areas near the epicenter, with thousands rendered homeless.
Basically, it looks like the main center of the earthquake was a city called Amatrice, and it's basically in a region called Lazio, where Rome is, just so everyone knows. But it was so strong that it affected also the nearest city, like Arquata del Tronto, Pescara del Tronto. And basically this city are completely destroyed. There is no trace of the city whatsoever. Everything was destroyed except from some buildings that were equipped with some things that could prevent their completely ruin. So this city, it's quite common in that area of Italy. It's very, like it happened in the past, in 2009. It happened again in a city near this city, which is L'Aquila, and it was a huge one. But the sources in Italy are saying that this earthquake is even worse than that one, and that one was a disaster. So this one is probably like something that we cannot handle in the short term. So we don't know what's gonna happen. Yeah, basically the people who live in that area are kind of used to it. Like, they're always ready, because this is something that happens quite often. It happened in 2009 as well, and was a disaster. So they are kind of used to it. But whenever it happens, and when it happens in this way, because as you said, it's like 6.2, so it's quite strong. It's not something you can even think about. It's not something you can even imagine, you can even describe. I think that they went to bed with a house and everything, and they woke up the next morning and they didn't have anything else. So they are like in the middle of the street, literally. Even if I must say that there are many autos, many cities nearby that are not affected by that were not affected by the earthquake. They are available for houses and everything. So there's a general feeling of help going on. Of course, the government is there. This morning, firefighters were sent, civil protection was sent. At the moment, there are like about 700 firefighters that are trying their best to save as many lives as possible, because there are so many people that are still under the ruins. Like this morning, 2 babies were saved, 2 girls. So it was a bit of a happy morning, if we can say that, but still it's something that I mean, in my opinion, it's like you see what happens every second. You just don't make plans much farther ahead. You just try to see how the situation unfolds, and then you decide what to do. I don't think they're trying to think ahead too much. They're trying to save as many lives as possible and live in the moment. Because
do you think the government has the capability to deal with the situation?
All right, I'm gonna say my very personal opinion. There are so many things that are still wrong with the houses and shelters from the earthquake in 2009 that have not been solved yet. And even there was another earthquake that was quite big in Naples in the 80s, and there are still people that are not living in a house as for now, after 30 years. So in my opinion, the government is not ready to help these people. I mean, if they have the physical and mental strength to do something themselves, that's fine. I mean, they're gonna do something. But if they are gonna need to fully rely on the government, then I don't think much will be done.
Well, 241 died in Italy for this terrible disaster, and I just speak half hour before with the people, Italian people that stayed during the headquarters. So it's a very terrible moment for Italy, and for the family, for the people. And 241 people die under the rock, and most of them are baby, you know, so it's a very terrible moment for Italy. I think is no at the moment, because the first intervent for the work is very after 40 minutes the civil protection come inside the little city on the mountain, you know. It's a very little town, but at the moment I think the government is a very trouble, because nobody think about this situation, and nobody thinks. The Prime Minister Matteo Renzi come, of course, in the little town to see everything, and he promised everything. But you know, it's the second time in Italy that happened this disaster. The first is 4-5 years ago, and in Aquila, and the people at the moment they live in the small house yet. So I think the government is not ready at the moment. I hope in the, I don't know, for 2-3 months probably, and because 241 people, and probably there is a more under the rock, under the house, probably 300 people died. Is a very catastrophe. I don't remember that in Italy there is this situation until now. So the government is not ready, I think. And but probably, or you know, all government in this situation try all the best, you know. But nobody happen, and nobody think about this situation. For one, you know, in one night, 1, 2, 3 small city, there is no more. So this is the situation.
US President Barack Obama has promised that aid will keep coming to flood-stricken people of Louisiana as long as it is needed to get them back on their feet. The president, while on tour of the flood aid community, said that federal support has reached $127 million to help 100,000 people who have applied for assistance.
President Obama arrived in Baton Rouge, where residents had set out household items to dry or be discarded. The unprecedented flooding has damaged about 60,000 homes in southern Louisiana, shocking residents who have never experienced a natural disaster of that proportion.
My house was as nice as it's ever been. I'm losing it. And I'm sorry. I just can't take this.
Obama assured residents that support will keep coming until people can return to their homes or rebuild their lives.
This is not a one-off. This is not a photo op issue. This is, how do you make sure that a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, people still are getting the help that they need. I need all Americans to stay focused on this.
The president was criticized for not interrupting his vacation on Martha's Vineyard to visit the flooded state, most notably by Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump, who visited Louisiana last week.
Honestly, Obama ought to get off the golf course and get down there.
Obama said he did not want to disrupt the emergency rescue efforts. Louisiana Governor Bell Edwards supported the president's decision, saying he could not spare the security personnel required for a presidential visit. He also expressed hope that Trump's visit was more than an attempt to attract voters' attention, but he later thanked the Republican candidate for drawing attention to the gravity of the disaster. Obama said that in times of tragedy, Washington tends to avoid politicking.
I guarantee you, nobody on this block, none of those first responders, nobody gives a hoot whether you're a Democrat or Republican. What they care about is making sure they're getting the drywall out and the carpet out, and there's not any mold building. They get some contractors in here and they start rebuilding as quick as possible. That's what they care about. That's what I care about.
At least 13 people were killed by flooding, while some others are still missing.
The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has assured regional African countries confronted with fighting terrorism of U.S. support. John Kerry visited Nigeria and other African countries to assess security situations and efforts being made in the fight against extremist organizations.
Nigerian leaders have struggled to keep unity in the country divided by religion and terrorized by Boko Haram militants. During the meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari and Nigeria's top officials, Kerry will discuss counter-terrorism efforts and try to stress the importance of religious tolerance. Nigerians may want more than talk, said Steve McDonald, an Africa expert at the Woodrow Wilson Institute, who spoke with VOA via Skype.
Africans are very, very impatient these days with Westerners who come in and preach to them. They need to see some concrete things. If he offers some further assistance, some further security assistance, as well as developmental assistance, educational assistance, particularly focused on the north, I think that will be welcomed.
Kerry arrives in Nigeria after a stop in Kenya, where he announced that the United States would provide $25 million to help the country prepare for next year's vote.
The election support for Kenya, I think, is a vital thing. Those elections have not gone all that well in the past. There's been some protest over results, and that needs to run smoothly. Kenya is an absolute key partner in both security and economic concerns in that part of Africa, and keeping it stable and on track is really important.
In Nairobi, Kerry also met with regional officials to discuss solutions to the violence in South Sudan. They agreed on the need for a regional protection force for embattled civilians. Kerry announced $138 million in new aid for food, water, and medicine for South Sudan's most vulnerable people.
We made it crystal clear that this is not forever. We're not just going to fill in a void. We're not just going to provide help incessantly. If they're not willing to accept responsibility and do the things necessary to deliver to their people.
Experts say it is important to ensure that the aid gets into the right hands.
South Sudan is infamously famous for huge corruption. Over $3 billion have gone into South Sudan as aid monies and budgetary support since its independence a few years ago, 5 years ago, and most of that has gone in the pockets of corrupt officials.
The U.S. policy toward Africa may change with the new administration. McDonald says the Republican candidate Donald Trump has no knowledge or interest in the continent, but he says the Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton may pay more attention to Africa than even the current administration, judging by her record as Secretary of State. However, the expert says Clinton may be more demanding on African leaders to do well by their people.
The U.S. Secretary of State, while in Nigeria, praised efforts by the Nigerian government in its fight against Boko Haram. Mr. Kerry stated that the fight against terrorist organizations will only be won if governments respond appropriately to concerns affecting the daily lives of its citizens.
The terrorist group Boko Haram has killed more than 20,000 people, displaced more than 2 million, and flung some 7 million Nigerians into hunger, thirst, and desperate need. On Sunday, they descended into a small village near Chibok in the middle of the night, looting every home that they saw, and then they took food and livestock before burning those huts to the ground. They killed 10 people that night and abducted 13 others, women and children, adding to the thousands of other victims, including the hundreds of girls, of Chibok girls who were abducted more than 2 years ago. Boko Haram boasts no agenda other than to murder teachers, burn books, kidnap students, rape women and girls, and slaughter innocent people, most of whom are Muslims. It has a complete and total disrespect for life, the opposite of every religion. It has a complete nihilistic view of the world. It fears knowledge. It fears education. It fears tolerance. In the past 2 years, it has used more than 100 women and girls to carry out suicide attacks. They actually teach girls how to hold a bomb under their armpits so that the explosives remain steady. They show teenagers how to use swords to decapitate. We might as well ask how anyone could be brainwashed into such atrocities. But because the children are so young, and because the abuse that they suffer is so great, even brave souls can be broken. This then is what Boko Haram is all about, and you know this better than I do. Not just murdering innocent people, but also transforming the most vulnerable people among us into killers of their neighbors, their own families, and even themselves. Now, certainly, northeastern Nigeria is not the only region that is plagued by violent extremism. And sadly, Boko Haram isn't the only terrorist group that we face in the world today. Earlier this year, an Islamist militant group linked to Al-Qaeda killed 30 people when they bombed a hotel in Burkina Faso. Over the first 6 months of 2016, the Lord's Resistance Army abducted more than 500 people, mostly in the Central African Republic and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And just a few days ago, Al-Shabaab militants killed 15 people and injured more than 80 when they detonated an attack near an open market in Galkayo in Somalia. And terrorists from or inspired by Daesh have carried out vicious attacks in Europe, the Middle East, South Asia, and the United States of America. So make no mistake, we do not have to be the prisoners of this violent extremism. It can be eliminated. No one anywhere has to live or should have to live among this evil, and it is evil. But it isn't going to disappear on its own, and that is something that His Eminence, the Sultan, understands better than anybody as he preaches tolerance and brings interfaith groups together in order to do the hard work of pushing back against extremism. It takes work, and it takes leadership, and it will require sustained effort from all of us, from regional, national, and subnational leaders, from the United Nations and other multinational institutions. It'll take great efforts by law enforcement and civil society. And I want you to know today that the United States is deeply committed to this effort, including by helping our partners to be able to build counterterrorism capacity. That is why at the State Department we introduced a countering violent extremism strategy early this year, and it is why we are working so hard to implement it. Though I might add, you all are already, under the leadership of the Governor and the Sultan, are already engaged in your own countering violent extremism efforts. There is no question in recent months that important progress has been made, and particularly here in Nigeria. Over the last 6 months, the Nigerian army has rescued thousands of civilian hostages. Hundreds of Boko Haram fighters surrendered to Nigerian forces. In July, Nigerian troops captured 16 of the group's leaders who admitted that they were running out of food, that their fighters were living off roots and unripe fruit. And just last week, your army thwarted an attack in the Northeast and took out more than a dozen militants in the process. The fact is that through the multinational joint task force with help from the United States, France, and the United Kingdom, Nigeria and its neighbors are steadily degrading Boko Haram's capabilities. Your country has taken back most of the territory that the terrorists had once captured. And Cameroon, Niger, and Chad, and Benin have made important contributions and enormous sacrifices in areas along Nigeria's borders. But we also know that beating Boko Haram on the battlefield is only the beginning of what we need to do. As the American writer Henry David Thoreau wrote, "There are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to only one who is striking at the root." So we have to strike at the root causes of violent extremism. To win the struggle for the future, nations need to do more than just denounce bankrupt, dead-end ideologies that the terrorists support. They also have to offer their citizens an alternative that is better, that offers hope, that actually delivers on its promises. And we have learned a lot about extremism in the last years. We obviously have been consumed by the fight against it since 2001, when out of the blue, the attacks in New York took place. People join violent extremist groups for a number of different reasons. And some obviously do so against their will. But there are far too many who join the ranks of these organizations because they have trouble finding meaning or opportunity in their daily lives, because they are deeply frustrated and alienated, and because they hope groups like Boko Haram will somehow give them a sense of identity or purpose or power.
And more reactions have continued to trail the row over Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn's claim of not finding seats on a Virgin train, just as the Office of the British Information Commissioner is now looking into possible breach of data protection following the release of CCTV footage by Virgin train to discredit Corbyn's claim. Ben Television Saremi Okpala brought these reactions.
To further prove his point on the nationalisation of the British Railways, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, who boarded a train from London to Newcastle, few minutes after he boarded the train, a video was released of himself sitting on the floor between carriages. A few minutes later, another video, CCTV video, was released by the Virgin Train officials showing Jeremy Corbyn bypassing some free unreserved seats and later on some free reserved seats. Is this action justified? Is this the best way to prove his point? Let's find out about that.
Not really. I wouldn't look at it and be like, oh, that guy went to sit on the train, so I'm not going to vote for him. At the same time, I'm sure other people will use it as a way and be like, would you really want to vote for a person that just go and do things on his own? But I think it's alright. Like, I'll still vote for him. He's still a good politician, so I don't think it will influence him that much. It's just, you know, with everything that goes on, then it will influence it because the other parties will make it into an issue. But apart from that, it's fine.
So I would say no, but it might also be because in general I am against nationalizing most things. But also, if you see that Jeremy Corbyn has to, well, he has to lie really in order to try to prove his point. That, you know, and especially if he didn't do it well, you know, he got caught in the CCTV. That's not the way to do it. If it really is true that the trains are very jam-packed, he should be able to get the evidence for that and show it in a way that is honest. Once you resort to trying to, you know, fake things, you know, it might be that he doesn't really have an argument in the first place.
It's easy to make a video of yourself and say that, oh, I'm sitting on the floor, look at me, but it's a bit of a staged way to do things. I mean, if you're going to do things, make sure you do it properly and do a video yourself and make a... So I think his ideas are correct and he's right, but he's going about the wrong way doing it, basically. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, I don't catch a lot of train, no? I take more bus. So, but the way when I take it is, I like it, I don't know. Yes, no problem. Welcome. Bye.
It's probably an oversight. If my legs were, I would have sat down in one of those seats. I'm not sitting on the floor. No, sorry, I wouldn't do it personally. No.
But do you think that would affect Jeremy Corbyn's campaign?
For those who are kind of lukewarm on him, they'll probably be like, nah, he's not even honest. But for those who are like, who believe in him and what he's got to say, then I think they'll be unfazed by it. Pretty much, yeah.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
All right, bye.
No, I don't.
About nationalisation.
No, I don't think it's the right way to prove a point. I think he's absolutely wrong in what he's done, and I think he's made himself look really silly.
Yeah, that's all. I think it was ridiculous.
I think it was wrong to do it, but the trains are a problem. So he's kind of like highlighting an issue, but it was probably done in the wrong way.
Is that going to affect you?
No, I would definitely vote for him because I just think I have such faith in his politics and his view towards people and his genuine desire to help people and not be money driven. It's okay.
I don't agree. I think if you can make a point without going that far, you know, you shouldn't try and cause problems for companies. So, do you think that would affect his campaign as a Labour leader? From my point of view, yes. Yes, because I don't think it's the right thing to do.
Politicians do.
Okay. All right.
Don't matter if it's Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrats, or even lunatic. Even back in the 1970s and the 50s, they did it the same. Nothing new under the sun.
I think at least he's doing some kind of action, do you know what I mean? Like, he could have done nothing, so at least he's sitting on the floor, like, proving a point.
What do you think that would affect his campaign as a Labour leader?
Maybe it would have got, like, attention and stuff, but whether it affected it or not, I think he'd have to, like, carry on to, like, yeah.
Jeremy Corbyn's actions are now causing him a strain and could affect his campaign positively or negatively. However, some people think he was doing the right thing in the wrong way. Osarime Nopalua reporting for Ben TV News.
With that, we conclude the news roundup for this week. Thank you for being part of the program. I'm Tunde Alabi. Thank you for joining us.